Yeah, so Kai Asakura versus Pantoja. So yeah, Alexandre Pantoja, really good guy. Another guy I really like on this card. Very entertaining fighter, dominant champion so far. Pretty much has been dominating the flyweight division in general. Ever since 2021, the man's just been on absolute tear. Manel Cap, Brandon Royval choked out with a rear naked, neck cranked Alex Perez, split decision over Moreno. Unanimous decision again over Royval. Unanimous decision over that fraud Steve Ursig, whose name should never be uttered again on this show. If you would have listened to us, you would have known that Kai Kara France is going to knock the Sonic rings out of that boy. Anyway, Kai Sakura, this is an interesting fight, and I feel like this is on a card that has some really glaring, inadequate, like discrepancies in terms of matchmaking and some really close fights in terms of matchmaking, like one polar extreme to the next. This one is a very, very close fight. And this is probably the closest fight on the whole card where you could just make such a strong argument either way for Asakura or for Pantoja. And what you were mentioning about does the UFC want a guy, from another organization to come in, instantly get a title shot, be able to beat their champion? Maybe it's kind of hit or miss on the UFC with that, right? So, like Brock Lesnar, for example, that's a guy who, when he came into the UFC, they instantly signed him. The man only had one MMA match, point blank, period. No matter what organization, they instantly put him in against Frank Mir, a legend of the sport, right? They clearly were hoping that he'd be able to just come right in and, like, they had no qualms, right, about, okay, this guy's only had one MMA fight. How bad would it look if this guy with one MMA fight came in and just dethroned this dude who's been in the organization for a while and is like on a legendary tear, right? Because Frank Mir, when he fought Brock Lesnar, Frank Mir, the dude was just insane. The guy was coming off of, I mean, he was 10-3 in the UFC, but he was like Anthony Hardonk, Dan Christensen, Tim Sylvia, Wes Sims, like Tank Abbott, Pete Williams, Dan Quinn. Like, he was fighting a lot of dudes coming up through the UFC, and he had been in the UFC since 2001 when he fought Brock Lesnar in 2008. He had already been a pretty grizzled vet. So it's like, do you want Brock Lesnar, even though this guy has a name, has a lot of fame from the WWE side of things? Like, once again, that's something against him. You want a guy doing fake wrestling, the drama, the male soap opera, to come in and instantly be your champion, to instantly beat a guy with 8 years of UFC experience. And they were like, hell yeah, we do. Then you also have examples of guys like Ben Askren who come in and they're like, all right, we're going to make an example of Ben Askren. You want to be in the UFC, Ben Askren? All right, we're going to give you hard fight after hard fight. And all right, we didn't expect you to win the Robbie Lawler fight. It was a little controversial, but we're going to make sure this next fight you have no chance. And so even though people thought he had a chance because it was against Masvidal, they got what they wanted, which was to embarrass him. They set him up. So it's hit or miss, right? It could go the Ben Askren route, and they could be setting him up for embarrassment, or it could go the Brock Lesnar route, where they're like, we want this Asian market, like you were saying. We want this Japanese market. We're trying to, one's really big over there. Ryzen's really big over there. There clearly is a market for Asian MMA. It's just one of the biggest barriers, and vice versa, for Americans to watch Ryzen, to watch One, to watch these, uniquely Asian promotions. It's the time zone, right? It's always the weird times and the weird scheduling. But if you could get somebody like Asakura, especially with him being specifically Japanese, like there's always been a thing in the UFC where it's like MMA is big in Asia, especially in Japan, but there never has been in the UFC, to my knowledge, an actual Japanese champion. There's barely even been Japanese fighters, period. Like Takashi Sato, we talked about, was one of them. And then there was the guy in the bantamweight division that fought Peter Yan, whose name escapes me. But there's not even been that many Japanese fighters. So this is their opportunity. So how do I see this fight playing out? It's tough because Asakura, the tape I watch, he's going to have a learning curve, right? And you would think with him being a world-class fighter and with some time to prepare, because he's been announced in the UFC for at least over 5 months now, you would think he has some time to prepare to the octagon, to prepare to the rule set and all that. But there's going to be some dramatic differences. You can't do soccer kicks. You can't knee ground opponents.
Right.
You can't do these things that I was seeing Kai Asakura get a lot of finishes off of in his highlights. You can't do those in the UFC. And regardless of whether you agree or disagree with the rules and whether they're appropriate, the only change that's been made to the rules since then is you can't be grounded with just your hands on the mat. So you can't milk that. But as long as you have at least your hand in like a knee or your butt or your back or whatever or some other limb, then you're still grounded and you still can't be kneed and you still can't be struck. So that's taken away a lot of weapons that Asakura favors. He can't do the soccer kicks and he can't knee or kick or ground opponent. He can't even do like the Kevin Randleman. I saw him when he's grappling and he has top position. He likes to do like the Kevin Randleman, like he lifts his body up in the air and does like the stomp knees on like the opponent's head, Kevin Randleman style. He can't even do those in the UFC. So he's going to have to deal with that. He's going to have to deal with this is now in an octagon. It's not in a boxing ring. That changes the grappling. You can't just fall through the ropes and have to get reset and things of that nature. And the other thing is this is the biggest X factor is I've seen some really good takedowns from Asakura, and I've seen some really good judo from him and some trips and like some uchimatas and like a single leg into like the little trip like Peter Yan style. I forget the Japanese terminology for that off the top of my head. That would make for a very interesting fight if he chooses to go grappling heavy with Pantoja because Pantoja has amazing BJJ, especially his leg lock game and his dynamic use of the leg locks to not only threaten submissions, but to try to sweep, to try to stand back up to his feet, to try to just figure out, all right, how am I going to use this to do what I want to do and now make this an advantageous position for me and take away whatever advantage Asakura feels he has here. How can I nullify that? That is the biggest factor that would make this fight interesting is if they engaged in grappling because the striking for these two, it's going to be insane because they're both bar brawlers, right? Like Asakura just no hands up, just winging punches. Just all of his punches are just furious windmill punches. The same for Pantoja, right? Pantoja, Jack Slack's article was like the bar brawling back snatcher or something where it's like the man's BJJ is like a Ferrari that he just keeps in the garage. He just would rather drunken wine mom boxing. That's credit to Jack Slack there. It's pretty accurate. Both of these guys, yeah, they'll stand and bang, but it's like, are they going to be scared of that from each other? Because my biggest thing is Pantoja is great and I'm a fan of his and I like him and he's been dominant. But he just feels like the most susceptible to being dethroned champion. Like every fight of his that I've watched, and I've even picked him in almost every fight, you're just on the edge of your seat like, this guy's gassing out. Like this guy looks tired. Like how much longer can he go? Like it's been very close, especially that Moreno fight this past July looked very close. And it's just concerning, right? And like he finished Royval easily in 2021, but in the Royval rematch last December, he really struggled at times, didn't look as dominant. And it's like, how much does Kai Asakura have in the tank, right? How much does he have left? Is he going to be able to, like, is his game really as reliant on those unique to the promotion he's coming from rule set? Is it really that reliant on it? Am I overhyping it? Could he easily make the transition with the different rule set and everything else? Like, it's just a lot different than Ryzen. You know, it's just a lot different. And it's so tempting, though, with those odds to want to go with him because he is that mystery box. And it's just because I do know personally, even having picked him, how skeptical I am of Pantoja. He always finds a way, but it's just terrifying until the official decision's read and it's assured that he's victorious. You're just always wondering how can he do it? How can he keep going? And it's like that's why I'm kind of like maybe Asakura, but it's like I'm hoping his power is why he feels so confident and just carelessly swinging and going with Pantoja like that, because Pantoja doesn't seem to have the same power. He doesn't seem to be just putting guys out like that. I mean, let me try to see when the last, because he primarily gets sub finishes like against Royval and against Perez. But man, it's been 2 years now since he's had a finish. Matt Schnell, he KO'd in 2019, but that's 2019. Before that,
Right.
once again, 2019 is last TKO. I think he's just a bar brawler, but I don't think it's because he has confidence in his power like Asakura. I think Asakura does that because he's like, you're not going to be able to stand. If you're going to do this and you're going to stand with me, you're not going to last. So that's kind of what gives me some optimism. The biggest X factor is the grappling. If it goes to grappling, I don't know who's going to have that edge there because, like I said, Pantoja seems hell bent on not using it. Even when it would greatly benefit him to use it, he just refuses. It's like he's got this little voice inside of his head that's just telling him, like, just bleed, bro. Like, just bleed, guy, just like takes over his brain like a monkey with cymbals, clashing it together, telling him just reckless abandon. The god of war and violence is automatron controlling this dude, just telling him to just bleed. And the same for Asakura, but I guess I'm going to go Asakura at plus 210 just because I'm tantalized by the mystery, because I'm tantalized at how he's going to do this. If the UFC is taking that angle of, all right, we're going to give you the best matchup we can. It's going to be challenging, but it's also very winnable if you have a good strategy. And for God's sake, let's please get this Japanese market going. You could be the first Japanese champion in UFC history, to my knowledge. I mean, hell, like I said, there's not even that many just active Japanese fighters, period, across the roster, let alone a champion in the division. They've been dying to do that since Dream went defunct and everything, and they can't buy out Ryzen because Ryzen's its own standalone thing, very unique to that side of the world. And I just don't think they have any interest. So I think Asakura gets it done. He's probably going to be primarily standing and banging with Pantoja. He's just not going to be able to resist it. Like I said, the man should use his grappling, but he doesn't, and he's just going to get drawn into a firefight with Asakura, like he always gets drawn into firefights with people. And if he was smart, yeah, he would grapple, but I don't have confidence. Like I said, it doesn't make sense in 5-round fights. Every fight he's had for a while has been 5-round championship fights because he's a champion defending the title, and he still refuses to do it. So I just think he gets in a firefight. I think he gets sucked into Asakura's game, and he's probably going to get knocked out. I mean, I'll have to think about it after hearing what you said, but right now, Asakura, I mean, you're already getting great money line, and you're getting a KO TKO at plus 350, but what are you thinking?
I'm probably going to surprise you here. I feel pretty confident about this one. I think I have a good read. But I did want to jump in real quick, too. You are correct. There have been no modern era champs from Japan. So that's from Yahoo. So, fact checked. You're right on the money, man. Okay. So, bar brawling, right? Would you say bar brawling is a high level of fighting?
No.
I think it's just Pantoja's not a great striker. Asakura does the same thing. It's like if you had defense, you would use it. It's the same thing we saw in early UFC. We saw Don Fry and then the other Asian guy, I can't think of his name right now, just holding back of each other's heads, just punching the dude straight in the face. It's like, okay, they didn't have anything else. Like BJJ wasn't, as far as I know, a huge thing in the UFC at that time. Is just the toughest guy would win. Here, okay, he's going to be at the grappling disadvantage. Neither of them really have a striking advantage here. And one of the big things I saw with Asakura is he has really, really horrible foot placement. Like when he's chasing guys, and even like when, not chasing, but when he's stalking, I think that's another word I'm looking for, stalking and chasing, he is just ripe to be taken down. Right now, look at the money. 50% of the money on both guys. So split straight down the middle. 75% of the bets are on Pantoja. 25% of the bets on Kai at plus 215. So they're paying out 2-1 odds. 50% of the pot. That seems tough there. And then just, once again, you said that this is like, there's Risen. They have that fight organization, and now you don't come in and go to the UFC and you just do a fight before the championship. You're coming straight in to a 5-round fight. in a completely different organization. Like you said, they don't have the ropes. This is just a cage. You're stuck in there. This is what Pantoja has been doing for years. This is what Pantoja is used to. You're coming over, and once again, it's the same sport, but you just change enough things, and that worries me. For 25 minutes, you're going against the champ that has a clear edge on you. Like I said, I don't give the striking to either guy. And then, once again, Asakura, could he get DQ'd? Because sometimes when you just get in the heat of the moment, you're going, is he going to do something that's not allowed? And then Pantoja gets the win there. There's just a lot that is freaking me out about Kai. So for Pantoja, once again, I kind of think Pantoja subs him. I really do. And Pantoja has just no finishing instinct in him at all, which is kind of what you were saying too. It's just, you're hoping he looks so gassed. You're just like, please just get to the end and win. Just get to the end and win. So I am going to do a double method. I'm going to do the sub decision. That's at minus 165. So it's not great odds, but I just think there's a lot going against Asakura in this fight.